Alright. Can everybody see me? Hi everyone. Hello to everybody who's already here. I'm just getting set up. I have forgotten my headphones, so I'm going to go get those real quick and then we'll get started with questions. Just putting my headphones in here. Alright. So, good, okay. I think we're all set up. We've got video, hopefully we've got audio. If anybody can't hear me, let me know with the little chat. Okay. So 3 people are watching now and we're going to get started. So this is the first of a monthly 30-minute rapid fire answers. So I'll be answering questions submitted by my Patreon supporters or my patrons, and it's private, live, just for my patron supporters, and I'll be posting it publicly later. I don't have too many questions that were submitted by patrons yet. I only got a couple. So I'll also be answering questions that I received anonymously on Tumblr or through my Tumblr blog. And I hope that information will be useful and interesting for you guys. And if you do have any questions, feel free to post it in the chat, which is a live chat, and I can see what you guys are saying. So yeah, let's get started. The first 2 questions are from the same Patreon supporter. Question 1 is, I often hear you say that when a person is acting autistic in public, that what matters most is the safety of the autistic individual rather than the embarrassment of the allistic, right? But let's say that we are dealing with an autistic person having a shutdown in public with, for example, a socially anxious person who is having a panic attack due to their autistic friend shutting down. The socially anxious person would need communication to calm them down, but the autistic person would need the exact opposite. What can be done in this kind of situation? That's a good question. In this situation, every time it happens, it's going to be different, and every person is different. So, like, an autistic person and a socially anxious person, they each have their own individual access needs, and they're both valid. And I feel like if you are hanging out with somebody, you know a bit about each other, especially if you're friends or if you're closer. And so in cases like this where you are both neurodivergent and you both have different needs that may conflict at times, I think it's good to talk about it beforehand, before those situations actually come up. So you can be more casual about it, or you can be more lighthearted about it. You don't have to make it very deep and serious, but you can ask your friend or the person you're with, just so you know, I have social anxiety, and as I understand it, there might be times when our needs conflict. So what's a good compromise? You know, you might need silence and for me to leave you alone during a shutdown, and I might be feeling really anxious and not knowing what to do and needing reassurance myself. So by talking about it beforehand, ahead of time, hopefully you and the person in question that you're thinking of are able to come up with something together. And it's hard because you can have 10 different autistic people and 10 different people with social anxiety, and they're all different, right? Each will have different needs. Like, there are similarities, but each is different. So it really is in each situation, each environment, and each person. It's an individual thing. So it just has to be discussed. When it comes to having disabled people or neurodivergent people of different neurotypes and different needs and abilities all together or hanging out, there are sometimes conflicting access needs, and I guess so patience and understanding on everybody's end, and then talking about it beforehand is probably the best with the individual in question. The second question that this patron supporter submitted is, let's say that, oh no, that's the last one. All right, here it is. Autism is often mistaken for being malicious and only caring about oneself. That can make it very difficult for autistic people to show support to loved ones without justifying themselves for their mistakes or actions, or focusing on their own emotions and take on the matter rather than the point of view of the other person who is in need of support at the moment. Okay, I think I understand. So what are good ways, tips, or tricks for autistic people to show support and be able to put themselves in the background while paying attention to the emotions and opinions of the person we are trying to support? Okay, I think I see what you're saying. That autistic people are often perceived as being self-centered or even malicious because of how we process and how we communicate and how we show concern is often misinterpreted. And again, I hope I'm understanding you correctly, and I think I do. So to give an example from my life, something I do when someone is telling me about something that's hard or emotionally painful for them is I share something like an experience that's similar. So if they say, my fish died and I'm really sad about it, I would say, oh, I'm sorry, that's really sad. I was really sad when my hamster died. But some people find that rude. Some people are like, wow, way to make it about you. I don't care about your hamster. My fish just died. So if you get that kind of response, then I think the thing to do is practice. Just instead of instinctively or naturally what I do, which is tell a story or refer to my own experience of something similar happening, instead you can just say, oh, that's really sad, I'm so sorry, is there anything I can do? And if what you're getting is more people are perceiving that you're not responding correctly, like with the correct emotional affect or tone of voice, that's trickier because so many of us autistic people have issue with modulating our tone of voice. So that's more trial and error. And also what I found helpful is watching movies and YouTube videos and stuff where people interact and basically just copying. Something that can almost never go wrong when someone is confiding in you or they're having a hard time and they need you to support them is just saying, I'm so sorry, that's awful, I'm here for you. It's pretty simple, just 3-point script, and you can expand on this or alter it as needed to the situation. So I'm sorry, like, I feel for you, that's really sad, or that's really frustrating, or whatever, and then is there anything I can do? Something else that autistics tend to do, and that I do as well, is immediately think of things rationally and logically and try to offer solutions. And so if someone is coming to you and they're in crisis and you're supporting them and you start giving them ideas and suggestions, some people don't take that very well because they don't want a solution to their problem in the moment. They only want to be listened to. And again, this isn't strictly like allistics like this and autistics like this, and it's not necessarily even fully an autism thing, although it is harder for us autistics. We need scripts and stuff to go off of, we need guidelines. It's more of a humans interacting thing, like that every person on earth will have different ideas about what you should do to comfort someone and what they would need to feel loved or supported. But generally speaking, some people don't like to be given solutions, they just want to be listened to, and some people don't like when they are telling you a story about their experiences and you are just trying to connect, like you're not doing it maliciously, but then you bring up your experiences too, and then they don't like that either because it can be perceived as bringing the attention back to you. So I find that, again, like that safe script to stick to is, I'm sorry, that really sucks, is there anything I can do? So hi to anyone who has just joined us, because we have a couple, oh dear, Kitty is knocking things around as she walks across my computer desk. Sorry about that. So hello to anybody who's just joining us, because I have a little like people counter down here and people are leaving and coming, and it's very interesting. So hello. Since that's all the questions that I had from patrons, I think, let me double check, but I'm pretty sure, I will now get into answering some questions from my Tumblr blog that were submitted to me anonymously. First one these anonymous asks is, does every autistic person have a special interest? And does the intensity of the interest vary person to person? Not every autistic person has a special interest, even though it is like a large or major criteria for ASD. There are a couple reasons that might be that an autistic person might not have a special interest. Some autistic people have been really discouraged from having special interests in the past, and so now, later in teenage years and adulthood, I've heard that they now have trouble enjoying things in that very hyper-focused way that's natural to them, like they actually get anxiety about it or feel bad for having an autistic special interest, so they are working through it or just can't anymore. Some autistic people going through burnout don't have a special interest, or their special interests still exist to them and are still important to them, but it doesn't have the same passion or spark as it did before. And some autistic people who are depressed or on some medications that can have more sedative effects also report that they don't have a special interest at the moment, or that their special interests change or are different or become weaker. I think that like everyone on the autism spectrum, they will have some kind of perseveration and hyper-focus. It might not necessarily express itself through an interest, I guess. And also sometimes it can be hard to differentiate what's like a hobby or interest or special interest in your life and what's your work or what topics you like to read about, and some people it's hard to pin down their special interest because it's something broad, like sci-fi. So no, I don't think that every autistic person always has what they can identify as a special interest, but I feel like all autistic people do have a tendency to hyper-focus and perseverate and to have that passion, and I think it's in us. It might just present differently in every autistic person. Alright, next question is, I'm not sure if this is connected to autism, but my emotions are muted. I don't feel emotion often, and when I do, it's weak. I also don't feel love and affection towards people I should love, except for my cat sometimes. I'm depressed, so I'm not sure if it's the reason. I also don't remember my childhood, so I don't know if this was happening then. Do you have any idea what this might be? Well, it could definitely depression, like you point out, anonymous asker, because loss of interest and subdued or muffled emotions are a huge, major part of what being depressed is. And you can be depressed for a really long time, and if you don't understand your childhood, I can understand where the confusion is coming from, especially because it also, what you describe, it also sounds a lot like alexithymia, which I just did a video on, and so It's my latest Ask an Autistic episode, and it's basically exactly what you describe. It's when a person has trouble identifying and expressing their emotions, and they may also feel like they have subdued emotions, or that they feel things in a not as intense way as other people. And also some people like stimia, they present their emotions with physical symptoms a lot, like tension or nausea, things like that. So you may be alexithymic, you may be depressed, and you may be both. There's also something called flat affect, but that is more what you express in your face and your body language and your tone of voice, not so much actually having weaker emotions. And I want to say just real quick to you, anonymous asker, that please don't let anybody ever make you feel bad for how you feel things, the way you feel them, what you feel, what you don't feel. It's all valid and everyone's different. And you can be good to and express love for people that you know, that you care about, without actually necessarily feeling these nebulous, mysterious love feelings that people talk about. And then it doesn't make you a bad person at all for having atypical emotional expression or feelings. Oh, that cracking noise was my ankle. Sorry, everybody. Next question is, if you don't mind sharing what's something you did as a child that you got in trouble for that was just plain kid behavior, as opposed to an autistic tendency that you couldn't help. This question I was thinking about a lot because I can't differentiate what I do and what my autistic tendencies or traits are, because it's not even a Venn diagram, it's like a circle. I am autistic, so what I do are autistic traits or tendencies. Like, being autistic is a huge part of me and informs everything I do, so every decision I make or everything I do will be an autistic person's decision. And also, I tried to rack my brain through my childhood for something I did that was just bad. And maybe I'm not normal, but I can't remember being a child and doing something that was just bad. Like I did bad stuff, I got in trouble, but everything I did, I felt in the moment like I had a really good reason for it, and I never consciously thought, I'm going to be bad, or I'm going to be bad to get what I want or to get my way. If I was ever bad, it's because I felt like that was the best option to either take care of myself or my family or to get what I needed. And I feel like it might be that way for a lot of kids. I don't know any kid who just is bad because, and even if they are just like throwing the worst tantrum ever just to be bad, then there's something underlying. Like, why? Why do they feel the need to throw this tantrum? Is it because they are not getting the attention or validation of their emotions that they need? Is it because they're sick or tired? I don't think any living being does anything for no reason. Humans are more tricky because we have a nature that like leads us to lie and stuff, even as children. And so maybe I'm just different and wrong, but I can only answer from my experiences. And that's what this question is about, is me specifically. And so me specifically, no, I don't think I ever did anything that was just bad behavior. And also, I don't think I can separate what I did as my kid behavior from my autistic behavior, because it was the same thing, because I was an autistic kid. Yeah. Is it possible to experience sensory overload in different ways? Like, when I'm overloaded from audio stuff, it feels like my brain is shutting down and it's pretty bad. However, when things are too bright for me, I just get a headache. Are the headaches also sensory overload? Yeah, sensory overload is kind of whatever you say it is, because it's more of like a mind state, like being sad, like you are overloaded in a sensory way. So some people, they define sensory overload totally differently than someone else. So if you feel like the reason that you got a headache is because you reached your visual light input threshold and now that sense is overloaded, then yeah, it's like sensory overload. Yeah, it expresses itself differently in everyone, and I think in different senses too. Yeah, thinking about my experiences, I am the same. I can get, there's also, yeah, there's different degrees of sensory overload too. Sometimes it's just a headache and a feeling like everything's pressing in on me and like I can't quite track, like everything's just a little too fast. And then there's total sensory overload where I don't know what's going on. It feels terrible and I can't process or parse any information. Next question is, oh, hi to the new people who are here watching the stream. I'm answering questions. I'm seeing how many I can do in like half an hour. Can an autistic person be hyposensitive or undersensitive to noise one day and hypersensitive or oversensitive to noise another day, depending on circumstances? I feel like this often happens to me, but every resource I find talks about being undersensitive in one sense and oversensitive in another sense. None of them talk about being both for the same sense. Yes, the answer is yes. You can both be under and oversensitive in the same sense. Also because there's so many different kinds of sensory input. So for me, I'm oversensitive to noises in my environment, like the humming of the fridge there, and yeah, any like tapping or clicking, music, buzzing lights, that's all very loud to me and I'm very sensitive to it, but there are times when I'm undersensitive to the sound of people's voices. So everything else in my environment is really loud and overwhelming and I have such a hard time hearing that someone is talking to me or understanding what they're saying and separating it out from the background noise. So yeah, it's totally possible to be over and undersensitive in the same sense, especially when there's different types of input. And it does change like depending on the circumstances. That's right too. If you're tired, for example, you may be more prone to being oversensitive to noise, whereas when you're not tired, when you're well rested, you are pretty average or even undersensitive to noise. So just to let everybody watching know that if any patrons have any questions, you can submit them in the chat here. I'll say hi and a smiley face, and I will answer them. And it's 4:28 now, and I started late, I think at 4:08, so I'll go to 4:38. So we've got 10 more minutes left. Let's go. I'm not autistic, but I share some traits like social discomfort, stimming, social scripting, echolalia, routines, meltdowns, and sensory issues. Would it be okay for me to use things targeted to autistic people, like stim toys or coping strategies? Hi, Anon. I would never, ever tell anybody how to identify or what they are. But are you sure you're not autistic? Because I think you should consider it as an option, because everything you describe is, like, you check a lot of boxes. But again, if you're not comfy identifying that way, or if you're sure that you're not autistic, that's cool too. There are people called autistic cousins. Sorry I just stopped in the middle of a question. I'm not sure if my live stream is still going because the YouTube page that I was looking at froze. So I'm trying to refresh it really quick and then I'll get back to that question. Okay, cool. We're still up. Okay, so what was I saying? Oh yes, Anon. There are people that we refer to in the community as autistic cousins, meaning that they might not be autistic or they might not fully meet all the criteria for an ASD diagnosis, but they share so many traits or so many life experiences that they have a lot in common with autistic people, and so they benefit from a lot of the same resources and spaces as autistic people. So that might be you, and in which case, yes, I mean, I think it's fine for allistic people to use stuff that's like stim toys that's targeted to autistic people, because I believe that anything that normalizes like chewy jewelry or tangles or stimming in public is great and makes for a more accepting society for autistic people. I also don't think it's appropriative for people to use autistic stim toys and resources like for social anxiety and stuff. Just, I guess, as long as people who are truly not autistic are not saying that they are. But I don't see that happening. So yeah, I think it's fine. If you find things helpful for you and your brain, go for it, and don't let autism or allism like keep you away from it. If it works for you, that's great. And I think more widely used stim toys and stuff, it just makes for a more open-minded society. So go for it. Next question is, I've noticed that I stim a lot, like pretty much constantly with one stim or another. Is this normal? And can a lot of stimming be a sign of something else if it's too much? I would only say that stimming is ever too much if the person who is stimming feels like it's too much. For me, I have a stim that I'm trying to break where I roll my right ankle, and over time, because I have a collagen disorder as well, that ankle has gotten really lax and pops and subluxes really easily. So in that way, that stim has become harmful. I did it too much. Like, I truly did it too much. And so now I'm trying to do it with my other foot and to, substitute less harmful stims. Yeah, I don't think, so if you're stimming to the point where you're injuring your body or you're not taking care of your basic needs, like if you're stimming and not eating or sleeping, if you're stimming over taking care of yourself and living a healthy life, then that's too much. But if you're stimming constantly and it's not in a way that physically hurts you, it's not causing you anxiety, it's just the way you do things, and that's great. And it means that you probably need to be stimming constantly. And so I think it's good that you are, and I would not be worried. I actually need to stim more. Marvin still helps me to remember and reminds me to take stim breaks, but 20 years or so of being an undiagnosed autistic really takes its toll on you, and you have to relearn how to stim and how to be yourself. This question is, I tend to use the word Aspie to describe myself and have since I was young. Although I do not use this word as a means of making myself seem more high-functioning or superior to anyone else, and I identify as an autistic person, not a person with Asperger's, I wonder if there's an alternative word I could use that would be more inclusive. This question makes me smile because, so you use the word Aspie to describe yourself, but you don't identify as a person with Asperger's, and you don't want to make yourself seem more high-functioning, so I think the word that you could use is just autistic, in my opinion, if you're wondering. That's what I do, and I think it's a way to be really inclusive in the community, to avoid the dichotomy of high-low functioning, and to avoid like division, Asperger's and autism, and like Aspie supremacy and stuff. And I think you agree with me too, so I would suggest maybe autistic as a word to describe yourself. Next question is, my question is, how you decided to be a speaker? I'm a software engineer and I've always wanted to share my knowledge, but it's really hard for me to be in front of a lot of people. I have tried to speak in public, but every time I feel so nervous, even if I know the subject very well. Firstly, I want to say that you're the normal one here, that public speaking is a very, very, very common fear, that most people feel that way about public speaking, and I'm kind of the odd one out. I've always loved public speaking because it's always been easier for me than being one-on-one. So I guess it's a trade-off. I love to speak publicly. I don't have any fear when I get up in front of people, unless I'm talking about something very personal, because I'm a very private person. But if I'm just talking about autism or educating people or whatever else, then it's easy for me. But it's a trade-off because one-on-one, or in a small group or in a party, even with people that I know very well, is very difficult for me. I've always liked public speaking, and so I've always been drawn to things that encourage it. I was in debate in middle school, and in middle school I also did a public speaking contest where I learned sign language and talked about Helen Keller and deaf history. And so I've always been naturally drawn to public speaking, and I've gotten a lot of practice because of that. I also looked at books and watched videos on how to do public speaking. There are a lot of really good YouTube seminars and even a TEDx talk on public speaking. If that's something that you really want to do, there's even courses online, like free courses. Excuse me, I'm trying not to sneeze. I have allergies, so I'm very sneezy. Okay, so yeah, if public speaking is something you want to do, then there are definitely free ways to get better at it, specifically online courses and watching YouTube videos, and then just practice. Like, find safe places with people that you trust and practice. Some people find talking to a video camera a really good intermediary step between, speaking publicly to a large group of people and not speaking public. Like, YouTube videos are kind of in the middle. So maybe consider sharing your knowledge through the internet and trying out a YouTube video or something like that and see how you do. You can also edit and have a script and practice and stuff. So that's really good. I have time for maybe one or two more questions. How do I take an assessment for autism? Depending on if you are under the age of adulthood or over, it'll be a little different. But anyway you do it, you're North America, so Canada or the US, you're probably going to have to need a referral. That means that you're going to be talking to a doctor, like your GP, your pediatrician, or if you have a therapist, that's much better, because a lot of GPs are very, very uneducated about autism and even will put off people, especially adults, especially adult people of color, and especially adult women of color. Doctors have actually deterred people from seeking assessments when they have no idea what they're talking about. So I strongly recommend that you see a doctor that knows you, preferably a therapist or a psychologist. If you don't have one, that's okay too. The other way you can go is what Marvin and I did is we paid out of pocket, and so it's quite expensive. We live in Canada, and so we went through an organization called ABLE, and they're a clinic with a team of psychologists and occupational therapists and psychiatrists that diagnose autistic adults, and we just had to pay them, and it was quite pricey, and they also actually required a referral though too. I got a referral from Fraser Mental Health, and that's how I ended up being accepted to ABLE for a referral, which we then had to pay out of our own pocket. So really it depends so much on where you live. How do I take an assessment for autism is not enough info for me to answer specifically. So yeah, it depends on where you live, how old you are, if you have insurance, if your insurance covers autism assessments, and if you're an adult, probably no insurance will cover your assessment. Unfortunately, it really sucks. Okay, one more question and then we're done, I think, for this month's live stream. There is one more. I know there is, I just have to find it. Okay. I'm autistic and I'm not nonverbal, but I do have a hard time talking or knowing what to say. I'm trying to get closer to my friend, but it's hard to talk or know what to say. I stay quiet because I'm not sure how or what to say. I end up doing uncomfortable small talk, like asking random questions or stating random facts. I just want to know if you know, how can two people get close without talking? My suggestion is something that is referred to as parallel play, which is when two people are in the same room together and maybe doing something that's related or maybe not, but every once in a while they might look over and say, oh hey, look at this cute cat photo, or the other person might say, oh, the person in this video just told a really funny joke. But basically you're doing things independently. So that can look like Marvin and me in bed, both on our mobile devices. Just every once in a while I might show him something, or he might say something to me. or we're just in silence together, like that comfortable silence. And a lot of introverts too parallel play. A lot of people parallel play. It works particularly well for autistic people, and it can be a really good way to make friends without feeling the pressure of needing to kind of like entertain them and keep thinking of things to say, because you're both kind of entertaining yourselves together. Alright, so it's 4:40 and I'm going to sign off on this video now. Thank you so much to all my Patreon supporters for supporting me and my channel. It means the world. Thank you to the patron who submitted the 2 questions from the beginning, and I hope that this video is informational for anybody who watches it. If you would like to support my patron and be involved in the next month's live streamed rapid fire answers episode, then I will link the Patreon page, my Patreon page, in the video description, and my blog and stuff. So, thank you for watching. This has been Amethyst doing rapid fire answers, and I'm pretty tired now. I think I'm gonna go have a nap. Bye.